Well, it might all be over in Toronto Blue Jays land. What a terrible weekend.
You are Locked On Blue Jays, your daily Toronto Blue Jays podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to Locked On Blue Jays. Thank you for making Locked On Blue Jays your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts, down on YouTube or the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
As always, I'm Braden Wasco. He's Carter First. You can find us on Twitter, Braden5 Wasco, Carter First too as well, on Instagram and TikTok at Locked On Blue Jays. If you're new here to YouTube or you're listening anywhere else, make sure you head over to the YouTube page. We sort of made it the hub now. You can drop a subscription. It really helps us out. It's free to do so. You might as well. We got videos, shorts, live streams, whatever else you might need. It's all there. Of course, the podcast, all on YouTube as well. Discord link is down in the description. We've been chatting with a couple of you guys down in the Discord as of late. I know Carter finally has joined, and he's going nuts in there. So make sure you guys
snapping around. I'm just snapping around in there. You know, we're having some good conversations, especially we're sharing our just horrible feelings, our negative emotions about the Toronto Blue Jays and the current state of that baseball team right now. Because for me, as a sports fan, isn't necessarily going the greatest. The Vancouver Canucks are just the most injured team of all time right now. The Panthers are just tanking their draft stock by winning meaningless games. Bryce Young looks good, I guess. And then you got the Toronto Blue Jays, who we'll get right into, obviously, throughout this episode and throughout the rest of this offseason, just hoping and praying for some sort of moves to be made.
Yeah, you know what, dude? It was sort of it was a nice weekend, right? Merry Christmas to everybody. I can't believe how many people tuned in for the Christmas episode and then for the Friday. Great on you guys. Hopefully you had something to watch on your Christmas besides NFL football. That's what we were trying to give you, and hopefully you enjoyed it. Sort of just brutal weekend all around. Like, if I'm being honest. So for those of you who watched the Christmas episode, I was putting my headphones on and snapped my headphones right in half, like an idiot. So now I fixed it, got new ones, problems fixed. We're good to go. And then the Blue Jays decide to absolutely sell the bag because this team cannot attract players to Toronto. Obviously, Teoscar Hernendez going back to the Dodgers. Corbin Burns going to the D-backs because that makes sense. I don't know. I'm just blown away. I'm upset. I'm upset with this front office that for some reason Toronto isn't, and I don't want to say for some reason, but for some reason Toronto isn't an attractive market. And you think it should be. You got the whole country behind you. You got people that hopefully want to spend. But this front office, Carter, has completely lost the entire faith of the league, of the players, because they know they haven't extended Vladdy. They haven't extended Bo. And I think that's honestly, and they looked super desperate in free agency. They were the most desperate looking team out there. So I just don't think that this front office is getting it done. And we've talked about it for the past year, Carter, since we've started the podcast, that Ross Atkins, Mark Shapiro, whoever it may be, they all need to go. There has to be a clean slate because they aren't getting it done. I don't know, man. Were you sort of the same feeling? Were you just upset, or are you sort of just over it? Like it's just water off your back at this point?
It's definitely not that. I'm definitely still frustrated about it. I don't know how you can't be. Clearly, this front office has no idea how to pitch a contract, just any sort of reason why you'd want to come to the Toronto Blue Jays to free agents. You go Shohei Ohtani, Juan Soto, Teoscar Hernandez, Corbin Burns. Now you got articles coming out that's saying the Toronto Blue Jays have given these guys the highest offer, and you would think money talks in pretty much every aspect of life, but apparently not for your Toronto Blue Jays. And it comes down to the team construction. It comes down to the direction of this baseball team because it's chaos. Right now, there's nothing that is certain whatsoever. Again, you said your best player is probably going to walk in free agency as it looks right now. Pretty much every single Toronto Blue Jays fan at this point. The money isn't really of value at all. Nobody is like 550 million for Vladimir Guerrero Jr. We just need a reason to watch Toronto Blue Jays past 2025 at this point. I feel like a lot of people are on the same page that if you're going to overpay for Vladimir Guerrero Jr., if you even can overpay in the MLB, that's a whole different discussion. But there's no certainty. There's no reason. Like, if you're looking at a guy like Corbin Burns, you're looking at Teoscar Hernandez, other than maybe the Vladimir Guerrero Jr. aspect of that, what are you advocating for this team? And why would Corbin Burns go to the Toronto Blue Jays rather than the D-backs, rather than the San Francisco Giants, when this team could be a bottom 5 team in baseball after this season for the next 5 seasons. Could be a bottom 5 team in baseball this upcoming season for all we know. If things go as bad as they did last year, this team could look even worse. It's tough saying that, but that is a reality that we could live in the near future. But again, there is still hope, I guess. It's really dwindling for me, though, as we get farther and farther into this offseason, because there still is Anthony Santander. There still is free agents out there. But when you look at all the guys we've missed out on, all the guys that we've been in on, all the guys that we have finished in the podium with these free agents, and you haven't landed anyone significant, I guess you could say Yimi Garcia, it's just fans are coming to a point where there's no reason to hope, and there's nothing that is bringing them in to think that this baseball team is going to be successful in 2025.
No, man, and it's the most frustrating thing because you talked about it, and the highest offer to Teoscar Hernendez, the highest offer to Corbin Burns. Obviously, there are outside factors here that just aren't baseball, right? Because if it was just baseball, guys would be taking the money and they'd be coming to Toronto and whatever. But obviously, other players in this league don't see Toronto as a playoff contender, as even probably making the playoffs. Because we always talk about if you can get to the dance, you never know what's going to happen. But obviously, players don't feel that the Toronto Blue Jays can do anything in this playoffs. And that's a huge issue when you can't attract talent to your baseball team, Carter. And I was going to wait to bring this up, but now I've sort of led myself here. Me and Carter on the couch yesterday, and I sort of told him, I was like, the Blue Jays are going to have to make a trade because nobody in their right mind is choosing to come to Toronto. So you need to get somebody in a trade where they have no option but to play for the Toronto Blue Jays. You have to force them against their will pretty much to come play here. Hopefully that you overpay in a trade because that's the only way that you're going to get guys that want to or have to come to Toronto, which is just the worst fact ever. Like, I think back to 2016, 15, 16, 17, Carter, guys would have lined up to come here. And then you have the rise of Bo and Vlad, and you think, wow, guys should be lining up to come play with these two. But when you have such a terrible front office that can't make Toronto, of all places, the country of Canada, look appealing to players in the league, something is wrong. Something needs to change. I don't think there's any more evidence for that fact than Corbin Burns and Teoscar Hernendez choosing to take less on a deal to not play for the Toronto Blue Jays. This is an absolute disgrace to the team, disgrace to the fan base. And I hate to come on and say this, Carter, but I mean, at the end of the day, what's left? Like, yes, you got Santander, Profar, Bregman, all these guys that could still come here. But at this point, I'm pretty much certain that no one's coming here. No one's going to choose to come to Toronto because if those two guys didn't and they see that this team has problems, what's the difference than everybody else in this league seeing that same thing?
Yeah, the only thing really attracting players to Toronto right now could be the money. If you want to get that bag, Toronto right now should be desperate enough to hand out that bag, especially for a guy like Anthony Santander. But especially with the pitchers in the free agency, like guys like Corbin Burns, when you have a defense as good as the Toronto Blue Jays defense and a ballpark that is relatively pitcher friendly, you think those would be things that you could advertise to different pitchers in free agency, being like, hey, even if it's a short-term deal, we could probably get your numbers a lot lower than they were before, and then you can use that as a chip if you want to enter free agency again. Just little things like that Ross Atkins maybe is bringing up, but clearly it's not enough for this Toronto Blue Jays team because we talk about the prospect system being bottom 10 in baseball. You talk about the product right now on the field, well, offensively probably being bottom 10 in baseball. I don't think that's a stretch whatsoever. And like right now, we went over the lineup on our Christmas episode, and Alejandro Kirk's hitting 4 in the lineup. Who can get excited about a team like that? And we talk about Ross Atkins, just the success of this baseball team. So I decided that I was going to add up the record of Ross Atkins during his Toronto Blue Jays tenure. Before I did this, I kind of went through it in my head, the thought experiment of how much I thought Ross Atkins was above 500. So I'm going to flip it over to you. Playoffs and regular season, how many games above 500, because it is above 500, is Ross Atkins in his MLB career?
Let me think. So 9 seasons. I'm going to say 34 games above 500.
See, I thought it was 30 when I was thinking this out. You add it up, Ross Atkins has a record in the regular season of 683 and 673. So that's 10 games above 500. And he's 5-10 in the playoffs. So you combine both of those, 688 and 683. He is 5 games above 500 during his Blue Jays tenure.
Oh God.
Just the definition of mediocre. That's literally what that is. Are you going 83 and 81? Let's even give them the one extra game on 500. Is that going to lead to a team success? Is that going to lead to the playoffs on a regular basis? Absolutely not. It's just at what point, and this is where fans are at, this is where we're at, and I don't understand how you can have a different take from this. At this point, I don't know how you defend Ross Atkins. When you look at the playoffs, again, like the Mariners, I guess you can't really blame game 2 on them, whatever. There is a few exceptions on this list, but overwhelmingly, when you've seen that this is the product Ross Atkins is putting on the field, it's just above 500. How are you supposed to be okay with that if you want to be a serious team that's actually willing to contend and win baseball games? And it goes back to the fact that some of these conspiracy theories are starting to gain, for me, a little bit more traction. I'm not fully sold on it yet, that Rogers really just doesn't necessarily care about winning. They just, as long as people are showing up, as long as they're in contention for at least until September. This year obviously did go to plan because you looked in June and this team wasn't in contention. As long as this team can be sold that they're going to compete in 2025, it almost feels like Rogers is perfectly fine with that.
To me, Carter, anymore, there's no excuse to not contend if you're a team willing to spend money, because you don't have to, worry about a rebuild. You can go buy guys. You can do that. And so there's no reason for me to think that a rebuild in any situation, if you're a big market team, is necessary. Toronto's a big market team, 8th in the league in payroll last season, and there's no excuse why this team shouldn't be better. But it's terrible contracts. It's, you're paying these garbage players way too much money. The team then does not contend, and then nobody wants to come and play for your team, which makes you, at the end of the day, you could still be a big market team, but they're going to be garbage players that you're just overpaying. And we can't let that go as an excuse. Like, oh, well, they're 8th in the league in payroll. Well, but who are they paying this money to? You paid Kevin Kiermaier $10.5 million. Like, that's not an okay contract. Like, use a little bit of the brains. And I know I'm a little fired up on this Monday, but it was such a brutal weekend. And, seeing your guys' comments roll in as well just showed me that, like, we're all in the same position. We all understand what's going on here. Why doesn't this organization understand it? And I don't know. Like, I don't know what else I can say, Carter, to really understand where this organization's coming from. We got a lot of comments and there was a lot of tweets over the weekend, sort of everything. People telling us how they feel, what their thoughts are. We're going to get into that in the second segment here coming up. We're going to take a quick break and we'll be right back with all of that.
Today's episode is sponsored by Rocket Money. Did Rocket Money help you find any subscriptions you forgot about and that you were paying for twice? That definitely happened to me. I had a few subscriptions that I didn't even realize I was still paying for, and Rocket Money made it so easy to track them all down. It's like having a personal assistant for your finances. I know I always do this. I always try to take advantages of free trials. Recently, I had very long hair. If you guys have been listening to this podcast, I decided I needed to change something up. So what I did is I tried to get one of those filters that give you different haircuts. Kind of wanted to see, tried to switch things up, make it get a little more creative. And I would have forgotten about that free trial, would have had to pay for that subscription. But Rocket Money allowed me to cancel that subscription and save me a lot of money in the process. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps you cancel your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps you lower bills so you can grow your savings. It brings everything together in one place, whether it's subscriptions, your spending habits, or even goals that you want to hit this year. Rocket Money has over 5 million users and has saved a total of $500 million in canceled subscriptions, saving members up to $740 a year when using all the app's premium features. Cancel your unwanted subscriptions and reach your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/locked-on. That's rocketmoney.com/locked-on. rocketmoney.com/locked-on.
All right, dude. So, I mean, we're at the point now where we got to go over some of the reaction to the fans. I mean, we got some comments. We've looked at some on Twitter. Everybody seems to be on the same page, but there was a couple ideas, couple things thrown around that I know, is some talking points, because now we have to figure out what's next. What's the reaction? Now, where do the Blue Jays go from here, Carter? And I know you have a couple comments, couple things to go over. I have a couple things to go over. So I'll throw it to you. You can kick things off, and then we'll just ride from there.
All right, let's jump just right into it. So we've had a bunch of questions, obviously. Some of them a little bit longer than others, so we have to kind of shorten these up, or else we'd be going off of 3 minutes just reading the question. So I'll start with this one. What is there excited to be? What is there to be excited about in 2025 for the Toronto Blue Jays? We've been very negative on this podcast recently for good reason. That's not a lot to be excited about right now, but I'm going to go into my thing to be excited about. And that's Bowden Francis. You saw at the end of the season, Bowden Francis looked like one of the best pitchers in all of baseball. Had a sub 1.5 ERA. The walk rates were unbelievable. Just some of the stuff that he looked like as we were watching the TV. You could see his pitches moving. He got it almost like the Jose Barrios slurve, as we always talk about on the. You can see the movement on the TV. Usually a pretty good sign for some of the stuff that your pitchers have. Post All-Star break, I mean, this guy had a 0.6 WHIP, which is absolutely ridiculous. 65 innings pitched. 140 opponent average, just ridiculous stats from a guy like Bowden Francis. And this is a rotation that has Chris Bassett, has Kevin Gausman, has Jose Barrios. You relatively know what you're going to get out of those three guys. If you have Bowden Francis take that next step again and really cement himself as being a number 2, number 1 guy on this baseball team, this pitching staff could look exceptionally well. When there's still talks about this in free agency, I'm not going to get into that too much because that is a very unreliable thing to rely on for the Blue Jays, especially with the history of Ross Atkins. You got Alek Manoah that's going to be there. You got Yariel Rodriguez for that 5th rotation spot. Maybe Jake Bloss is in there as well. So overall, you could be excited about the whole starting pitching. I would say you could expect a lot of bounce back, but especially Bowden Francis, when you have a guy that doesn't walk a lot of guys, has a very good fastball. The command you started to see got a lot better in 2025 or 2024 near the end there. I think this is a guy that you can be very excited for in 2025.
Yeah, I love Bowden Francis, and I think that he really showed himself at the end of last season. The problem for me here is why are we getting excited about a 4th or 5th starter? Like that's a problem. And it's good. It's a good thing for the rotation that you have a very solid guy that's considered right now your 4th or 5th guy. But at the end of the day, we go back to the same thing, and this team needs bats. So is that exciting for me? It's nice to see. Is it exciting? Maybe not necessarily.
I think that's one of those things you kind of have to look in a vacuum again. You don't think about the team needs. You think about, oh, Bowden Francis could be a top 2 starter when you only need him to be a number 4 starter. So in that sense, That's kind of where I'm approaching this from, because if you go look at it from the full picture, you're just going to go and be disappointed once again.
Yeah. Carter, if I have to say something that I'm excited for, and I don't want to get too serious on this podcast all the time, but this is a very serious matter that I think is exciting for all the fans that are in Toronto, and that's the Looney Dogs, man. I'm going to see if they can break the record. No, in all seriousness, there's a few things that I'm excited for. Obviously, to see Vladimir Guerrero Jr. just go out there and mash baseballs. Bo Bichette hopefully having a bounce back season. The return of Alek Manoah is another one that I'm very excited for, to see what he can bring post injury. He's a guy that I'm really still high on. I have still high hopes for Alek Manoah because we saw him last season. When he got his feet under him, he looked good, and then of course goes down with the injury. So there are a few things that I'm excited for. The problem with all these things that I'm excited for is that if Vlad and Bo have a really good season, you're going to lose them to contracts and free agency. So it's the good with the bad, right? Yes, we might get one more season of fantastic Vladimir Guerrero Jr. baseball. Fantastic. Maybe Bo Bichette leads the league in hits again. But then you lose them. You lose them the next year, most likely. If this continues on the same path we're on, you're going to lose them. So as much as I'm excited for some of that stuff, I'm really worried as well. So, and I think that's with everything right now is you're excited, but you're also very concerned for the future.
See, that's where we're at. We talk about exciting things with the Toronto Blue Jays, and you can't get through a 30-second conversation without bringing up the disappointment once again. That's just where current things are, unfortunately, in Toronto Blue Jays land. So I'll start with another question here. Is there any scenario where the Toronto Blue Jays win the division in 2025? Short answer, no. That's not really whatsoever. But I want to kind of go into this as an extension, is say that everything the Ross Atkins plan somehow works out. Every single thing that he is betting on works out for the Toronto Blue Jays. Where could this team end up if they have to get lucky, kind of, is where I'm going at here. They have to line Anthony Santander. I think that's a given at this point. We talked about we need a corner outfielder. Anthony Santander is really the only game changer that's left in free agency. So you got to line Anthony Santander. That's a given. Alex Bregman, I'll throw him in for this conversation. That's, again, things would have to go very well, especially from what we've seen from the past free agencies and just this free agency in general. So you'll add Alex Bregman as well. You get Will Wagner, you get him to hit maybe 115 weighted runs created plus. George Springer is slightly above league average, even league average. You're going to be happy with. You get Bo Bichette back. Alejandro Kirk kind of returns to close to that 2022 form. Kevin Gossman bounces back. Jose Barrios bounces, or doesn't really bounce back, but just continues to be good. Chris Bassett maybe has a little bit of a better season. Bowden Francis takes those steps. Again, it's a lot of what ifs here. Yeah, maybe Elvis Martinez goes and it becomes an everyday player for the Toronto Blue Jays. But all of that, say if all of that goes well, probably still need Garrett Cole's arm to fall off at some point in the season. Aaron Judge maybe decides that he's going to hit left-handed instead of right-handed to make it more fair for the league. At best, I think if expectations are exceeded, everything skyrockets, everyone does way better than expected. I think at best, you get the Toronto Blue Jays in the first wild card, and that's if everything goes well.
Well, and Carter, I mean, and you didn't even mention the Baltimore Orioles, who are an absolute stud team, who I think could easily lead this division. And yes, I don't think the Baltimore Orioles are going to be a great playoff team this season. I think they could have a great regular season, but I could see a fall off again. I think the Yankees, looking at complete success, I think the Yankees have to be your number one. But it'll be a dogfight between them and the Orioles again to see who comes out in the number one seed in the AL East. And then where do the Blue Jays fit in? You're right. Yes, they could be okay. If everything goes to plan, they could be okay, slide into the playoffs. And, again, like we said, you just got to get to the dance. But we'll have to wait and see because all the signs are pointing at the Toronto Blue Jays to be a bad team again. And that's the frustrating part. And I know I don't want to be too negative. I know we're trying to bring some type of positivity, but right now there's just not a lot. You're looking at your two superstars on a contract year that could go into free agency. Nothing signed in free agency. Nobody. You brought back a guy from last year. Then you made one trade for a defensive second baseman. I don't understand how anybody sees the positivity in this team right now. I think as Toronto Blue Jays fans, you are having a panic attack. We're going to be running up and down the streets of Toronto calling for heads because that's all we can do. And then if I still don't believe that even if Ross Atkins does nothing and this team's terrible next year, I think Ross Atkins is still back the following year. This front office is in shambles.
It's not great. That's what it is. It's not great. And it's just a continued disappointment for the last, I guess you could say even since 2022, that offseason was very disappointing. You go back and go to 2018, 2019, you can't necessarily, I guess, blame that on Ross Atkins because you're kind of getting to the end of your peak. You're getting to the end of the great things in baseball. And then the rebuild happened. Top three, one of the best prospect systems in all of baseball. And then obviously we've seen 0 playoff wins as the base of that. You might have to talk me off the ledge a little bit here. I'm starting to get a little bit Boston Red Sox pilled, a little bit of the Skylar Peters difference here. I think the Boston Red Sox could be a little bit of a dark horse to win the division. I'm not going to go out and say they're going to win it and they're not going to be my favorite, but it's slowly I'm getting there. It wouldn't surprise me necessarily if they have an even better year than they did last season.
Carter, all I'm going to say is if that's your take, I think you got to stay off the betting apps because I do not want you placing money on the Red Sox ever in your lifetime. Carter, I just want to get into one more thing before we hit the break and go into the sort of final segment here. And this is one actually from Twitter because I looked at some in our comments and they were great. Some of them a little long-winded. We'll have to get into some of them a little bit more in depth. This one's more surface level, just something I want to bring up. The Jays offered more. You can't blame Ross Atkins. He didn't want to come here. Yes, I can blame Ross. It's his job to make the Jays an attractive destination. He hasn't done that. He's made a team so unattractive. Multiple players have taken less money to play for them. And that's sort of the sentiment I'm hearing from everybody right now. I mean, even we talk with our friends. It's not that Ross Atkins is making the wrong decisions this offseason. He's going after the guys we wanted him to go after. The problem is no one has faith in Ross Atkins or this front office anymore. So a change has to be made there. Because if you're not willing to pay your superstars that are already here the money that they probably deserve, or even more, but you need them to stay, whatever, you're not making the right moves for this future of this organization. And so, yes, I don't blame Ross Atkins for... I do blame Ross Atkins. I don't think that he went about it the wrong way. I think that everything building up to this offseason has steered players completely away from this team, which is a Ross Atkins problem. So as much as, yes, he made the right decision, at the end of the day, it all stems back to him not making the correct decisions, keeping Vlad, keeping Teo at the time, keeping Bo Bichette, or not offering Teo that contract the following year. There's a lot here from Ross Atkins that just points to the fact that he shouldn't be this team's GM anymore. But he is. And there has to be a move made. And I know we call for his head every year. But I still don't believe it's going to happen next year. I think they're going to keep Ross Atkins around. I have a bad feeling.
If you have a repeat season like this, I don't think there's any way you can. Like, after this last season, I think our leash was done, but there was still some sort of justification for it. All these guys are under expectations. You expect these guys to have better years. You expect George Springer to fall off, Bo Bichette, yada, yada, yada. If you have a bad 2025, and this is the signings that you have going into 2025, you don't have an excuse. This guy is selling that the team is supposed to compete for 2025. And his signing of the offseason is Yimi Garcia, who was on the bullpen last year for a bottom 5 bullpen in baseball. So when you look at all the things considered with Ross Atkins, like, the leash has to be at its wit's end. It has to be the shortest leash that he's had at this point. If you have another just uncompetitive season, there's no way that you can bring this team back, or else you're going to lose a ton of viewership for that 2026 season. And it's just disappointing to think about. It's tough for Toronto Blue Jays fans to get excited about a team when your signing of the offseason is Yimi Garcia. Your trade of the offseason is Andres Hernendez, who had an 85 OPS plus in 2024. And it was around there in 2023 as well. Hasn't been good since 2022, at least offensively. So a lot of things are going to have to go right. We're going to have to hope and pray. We need a Christmas miracle, as I talked about on our Christmas podcast. And at this point, like, we just need anything. We need some sort of ignition of life into this fan base, because right now, just talking on this podcast, looking at Twitter, looking at Instagram, wherever you want to go, when anything related to the Toronto Blue Jays, not a lot of positive things to be said right now, and for good reason.
No, there's nothing, dude. And that's so frustrating for a fan base, is to go into a season on a team that should be competitive because they have the money, they have some of the personnel in-house. All you have to do is make a few correct decisions, and this team could be good. And then to continually be disappointed is one of the biggest kick in the balls I've ever seen in my life. In saying that, we're going to take a quick break. We'll hit our third segment because, this is just, this is a complaint fest at this point. So we'll be right back. All right, we're back. Carter, I don't know. You know what? We can keep harping on the same things, and we probably will have to over the next few, month and a half, 2 months until the season gets underway. At this point, are you convinced that nothing's going to happen? And this is just going to be the team that's out there? Like, maybe some, whatever, few signings, but do you think the blockbuster deals for this team just isn't there this year?
I think the major signings are definitely done this offseason. I don't think Ross Atkins is done necessarily, but it's going to be some random guy that is going to be very hard to get excited about. But we're going to have to spin zone it, and we're going to have to say that this guy is going to be one of the best hitters to ever grace the Toronto Blue Jays field, because that's where we're at as Toronto Blue Jays fans. We just got to hope and pray that everything works out according to plan for this team to be successful in 2025. Is that completely out of the realm? Offensively, I don't know how this team can be serviceable. When you look at the pitching, again, you can advocate for how the starting pitching could be really good, maybe carry you through some baseball games. You can have the floor as probably what it was last season with how good your starting pitching could be. But if you have some fall-offs, these guys are getting up there in age. Kevin Costner's getting older. Chris Bassett, I think, is 36 now. Jose Barrios not that old. But you look at some of these top-end rotation guys, you got to hope that they can be how they were throughout their careers. Or else, if you don't get your starting pitching, let's just go back to the draft lottery again and hope that we can get a first overall pick in Toronto Blue Jays land. But I got a couple more questions here that I wanted to go over. Got two more. One simple one that I've seen all over Twitter, all over Blue Jays media. Where do we go from here? What's the next move? What's the next step? What needs to be done for this Toronto Blue Jays team just to be excited about anything for this upcoming season?
What's next? It's a great question. And I think if I had the answer, I do have the answer, Carter. It's sign Santander. You have to give him the bag, give Vlad the bag, give Bo the bag. You need those two guys to be here. the problem is I look forward to what this team is and what this front office has done. And again, I keep going back to it. I don't have faith anymore. I'm out of it. I'm the wells run dry. And I don't know. I don't know what's next. At this point, I'm almost thinking that this is the team we're running it back with. And it's like, suck it up, Blue Jays fans. That's a little bit what the messaging is to me. Like, hey, we'll just, I don't know, pray to whatever God you believe in that this team's going to be good. And that's it, because there's nothing right now that's making me feel like that this team can do anything. So I don't know. I don't know what's next. It's hard for me to tell you. I brought up the whole trade piece. That might have to be an option here. Get players that have no choice but to come here. Because I don't think anybody else wants to at this point.
I'm almost getting to the point where if you're not going to do anything else, just commit to the rebuild. You look at how the juggernauts in this division. You look at the Yankees, look at the Orioles, you look at the Red Sox. I'm getting higher and higher on the Red Sox. I think they're going to be at least competing for a playoff spot in 2025. That doesn't leave you a lot of room in the AL East. It doesn't leave you a lot of room in the AL whatsoever. And I hope that we are so wrong. And I hope that we can look back at this and somehow be like, holy, we were down in the dumps for literally no reason. But even if we get there, if we get to June and we're 10, 15 games above 500, we get to September and we're in a playoff spot. Well, looking back at it, I think it's still going to be justified for the way we're feeling right now. Just looking at all the things that need to go right, just looking at this team on paper. Because you look at the team on paper, especially the batting order, and it's just, how is it supposed to compete with a team like the Los Angeles Dodgers? Just going over off the top of my head, they're top 6 in their lineup. Then they have Mookie Betts, Shohei Ohtani, Freddie Freeman, Teoscar Hernendez, Max Muncy, Will Smith, Michael Conforto throw in their 7. Then you got Tommy Edman, who might be at 8th in your lineup. Like, that is absolutely ridiculous. And this is a team that you're going to have to compete against. This is a team that might be a dynasty in baseball. And do I expect the Toronto Blue Jays to be the Los Angeles Dodgers? No, that's not what I'm saying at all. Do I expect them to make some moves to at least have a chance against the Los Angeles Dodgers when you have the second richest owner in all of baseball? Absolutely, I do. And maybe we're just getting to the point where we can't think of the Blue Jays as a big market team. We can't think of the Toronto Blue Jays as a team that's going to spend. We got to think of the Toronto Blue Jays as more of a team like the Cleveland Guardians that try to get cheaper, try to get these players that are on lower contracts, lower term contracts, lower value contracts, and just hope that things work out and they can have these huge breakout seasons so things can go right for the Toronto Blue Jays.
Carter, you talk about the expectation and looking back to this episode. And you know what? It all comes back to the fact that the stars need to align for this team. Literally everything has to go perfectly. Otherwise, there won't be success. And what I look at is over the past 9 seasons of Ross Atkins being here, the stars haven't aligned once. The stars haven't, every player has not played to their potential every single year. That's baseball. That's what's going to happen. Some guys are going to play exceptional and have seasons above their averages. Other guys are going to play very poorly. And right now we're in the position of having to expect every player to be an MVP. I don't know. That's a complete joke to me. And you're right. I think we have to stop thinking as the Blue Jays as a competing team for the Los Angeles Dodgers and the New York Yankees and the Baltimore Orioles. We can't be those teams anymore. We're going to have to be the team that hopes and has one of those breakout years. And I don't know. I don't know, man. I'm all out of juice. It's early on this Monday, and I'm already completely out of juice. That's not a good sign.
As we've seen, you don't have to be the highest payroll team in baseball to have success. There is scenarios where you can be in the middle of the pack. You can be in the bottom of the pack and you can have a very successful team. It's just, I'd be way more comfortable going out and signing these big names, having a better team on paper, and then you can rely on some of these superstars in the MLB rather than taking all of these chances, rather than having a hope and a prayer in the offseason and then maybe things working out. But it's just an expectation thing, and maybe we do have to adjust that for our foreseeable future, especially under the Ross Atkins era. It just sucks when you have the second richest owner in all of baseball. You've had this top payroll in all of baseball. So everything is set in place that you can be a team like the New York Yankees, the New York Mets, the Los Angeles Dodgers, the Astros, teams that do spend a ton, and the Toronto Blue Jays do spend. But at this point, we're almost thinking, where is all this money going? How is this team a top 10 team in payroll in baseball when that product on the field was that bad in 2025? But saying that, Pretty negative episode. Again, it's unfortunate. We need something. Again, fans need something to get excited about. When you look at Alejandro Kirk being the guy that might hit four in your batting order, how are you supposed to say this team is going to be good for the upcoming season, especially when you look at all these other teams, even in the AL East, making these moves that are making them significantly better for 2025? Let's saying that, do you have any more questions from the fans or any just thoughts, insights from yourself to end this episode?
Yeah, I mean, I got some more. I might save them for next episode because, again, I think there's a lot more conversation that can be had around, what's transpired, what we have to, look ahead to into 2025, what needs to happen now. I think there's another whole episode that can be done eventually, so I'll save those. You know what? We're getting to the end of the year. 2024 has almost come to a close. I'm really hoping that we can turn the page in the new year with this organization. Will it happen? Probably not. But let's put the Blue Jays out of our head for a couple days. Let everybody go and have a fantastic New Year's. I don't know. Go drink 30 beers. I don't know. Don't take my advice, but that's maybe what I'll have to do now because I look ahead to this team and that's what I'm going to need to get through this season, I think. So I don't know, Carter. That's where I'm at. Happy New Year's, everybody. Carter, anything else from you before we sort of kick out of here for the this Monday episode?
I just wanted to thank everyone for the likes, comments, views, subscriptions, literally everything that you guys are doing to support the channel. It has been much appreciated. We've had some of our best months in our history, so that obviously means a lot to us. And just want to talk about the Discord. Obviously, we got the trial and error out of the way. We kind of worked through some shortcomings. So I've been active in that Discord chat. And that's what we've always talked about on this podcast is that we like to be for the fans. We like to just, snap it around with the boys. That's what we were doing before this podcast. So it's what we continue to do with this podcast. So the Discord is probably the best way to do that. If you guys, we have a link in the YouTube description here. If you click on that, take you right to the Discord. Me and Braden are pretty active in there. We've been talking about the Corbin Burns signing, Teoscar Hernendez signing. That's probably the first place that you're going to see our first initial reactions to these big signings, to these trades, to any single transaction that happens in the MLB. So, just thank you guys for all the support recently. And hopefully we can, turn the page, leave the negativity in 2024. But I'm definitely not going to fall on my sword with that take right there. Again, thank you guys for watching. And we'll talk to you guys in 2025.